All right, so I thought that I would record a little something that I've been thinking about in regards to some of the recent goings on around our corner. As most people are probably aware, there was a big conversation between Jacob and Father Stephen DeYoung from the Lord of Spirits podcast and other various things. And it was a very good conversation. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was a good faith conversation, good dialogue on both sides. And um, I don't, I didn't want to take the time to find whatever the one specific instance in there. But at one point, Jacob kind of mentioned something about some of the exclusivity of the Orthodox tradition, and Father Stephen said basically like, "Oh, we don't ever make any statements about who's going to heaven and who's going to hell," which I guess is his kind of workaround with the exclusivity problem, and maybe that is officially the case. I'm not sure if that's the way they do it, but I think that there is a little bit of an issue with this thing. And to be suspicious and conspiratorial, I saw something this week that actually made me think like there's some stuff going on behind this thing, because I would say for my part, I started discovering things about like the Orthodox Church. I think Jay Dyer was the first guy that I really listened to. I didn't like his take on it, why it was the great. It was just this kind of typical like rationalistic approach of here's the facts and this is what all this research has led me to believe, and therefore Orthodox is the only correct way and everybody else is wrong, which he came to after he went from evangelical Christianity to Catholicism first and then Orthodoxy. So I don't know. He's changed his mind quite a few times in that regard, but whatever. And of course, Father Stephen and many other Orthodox priests have been on the Gospel Simplicity channel, and I think that that's a really good channel, and that kind of does do a good job just of making people more aware that although there are differences between different sects of Christianity, there is a commonality there, and understanding the differences and why they exist and all that, I think does good in the world because it helps us to get along better. It helps us to show more love and understanding towards one another, and hopefully achieve some goals that are for the good of all of us. I think everybody in this corner probably is aware, at least in that regard, how Paul Vanderklay regards Jordan Peterson. He refers to him as the unauthorized exorcist, and that Jesus' disciples are complaining about this guy casting out demons in Jesus' name, and he's not one of them. And Jesus said, if he's not working against you, then let him be. Like, hey, he's accomplishing something that's working towards the goal. And I think that at least that level of charity should be available towards those who are different than us in their outlook or their decisions. And I think that's for Christians in regards to other branches of Christianity, and I think we should look that way in regards to Judaism and Islam. As much as they are being faithful to those goals that we agree upon, there's no need to fight. Now, if you're talking about like the Andrew Tate model of Islam, that's seems like, oh great, I found a religion that validates my misogynistic viewpoint, then I think that's probably something we should oppose. But I do remember the Jordan Peterson podcast with the guy who wrote the book. It's called The Mauritanian, and who was just treated terribly, mistreated, and wrongly arrested as a terror suspect. And the love and the forgiveness that he that he showed towards the people that treated him wrongly at the end of that podcast was just unbelievable. And so, I don't doubt that there are good-hearted Muslims in the world. So when I started listening to Lord of Spirits podcast, I thought it was really good. I learned a lot. There's a lot of interesting things they said. They presented it in a good way. Definitely probably changed my opinion about some things for sure. And I still, I do really see the appeal in like the Orthodox liturgy, the way of worship, and the way they do everything. I don't think I could commit to it as like my one and only forever church. Some of it's probably, there's a lot of differences just fundamentally in my view about the way things should be done, but and the need for evangelism and things like that. But it was a really good conversation between Jacob and Father Stephen, I think, and the podcast is a good podcast. I would recommend it. But kind of what made me cool my jets a little bit, like many people have said in regards to this Orthodox thing, is the Ortho Bros, as they are known. And that's this group of individuals who are just more or less like online enthusiasts of the Orthodox Church. I'm sure some of them have gone for real into real Orthodox churches and gone through all the classes and become baptized and all that. But it's really like they are kind of like the Andrew Tates of the Orthodox Church in some way. And they really seem to relish the exclusivity. And I would say the guys on the Lord of Spirits are both ex-evangelicals, I guess you could say. Most of the Orthodox people you tend to encounter in America are ex-evangelicals of some stripe or another. And I'm sure there's a variety of opinions about how this was just a better fit for me, all the way to the most exclusionary. It's not set in stone. But there is an example. Let's see this guy here, Pastor Joshua Shuping, and he converted to become a Eastern Orthodox priest, and then left the Orthodox Church and went back to evangelicalism. And he really has said it is because of those reasons that while they draw people in through the beauty of the service, the icons, the mystical approach, smells and bells, as it's said sometimes, at the heart of it, this exclusivity really is there. And in this video, he was going over that there's a certain Sunday of the year, Orthodox Sunday, where they pronounce a ritual cursing on all other Christians. And basically it's, like this and so this is where I say, well, Pastor Stephen's saying maybe not, they're not saying who goes to heaven and who goes to hell, but they are saying that their church is the only correct church, and you need to be in it, and if you're not in it, you are cursed. And it's for such things as using the wrong type of bread for communion. This is like, and it's difficult to say, like, is this a central important aspect of the Orthodox Church? I don't know. Maybe not necessarily. In America, probably not. It's probably unlikely that it accounts for an important part of most Sunday morning worship or the communal life within a local town, but it's still there. It's still on the books. And I think there's probably Catholicism has similar things, but Catholicism kind of has done things such as Vatican II that more or less rescind those more exclusive things, and so those things are still there in the records. It's record of the past and what was believed, but it seems like there's a more official renouncement of that sort of exclusivity now. Whereas there is no such thing within the Eastern Orthodox Church, and it doesn't seem that they really have any sort of mechanism for updating that. Now, the only reason why I'm doing this is because something kind of odd happened the other day just through the YouTube algorithm, where this other video popped up on like my homepage, and it was this one here. Episode 8, Why We Can't Pray with the Heterodox. And this guy was talking all about how Orthodox believers cannot pray with Protestants and Catholics. It's wrong, blah, 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 because the fathers said so. This is the canons of the apostle. I made a comment to something, and he just kind of sent back a bunch of, oh, this is all written down in the records and blah, blah, which is like the whole basis for everything they do. Brain not required because the fathers have done all the thinking for you. And you know, I was like, wow, like why is this on my feed like this? And then so I started looking at his channel or whatever, and this is episode 8 of his channel, his feed here. And when you look at his channel, he's got 1.67 thousand subscribers, so it's a pretty big channel, especially when you look at this. His oldest video is 3 months ago. That's when the trailer came out for the video. 3 months. And then like look at what the videos are about. So, okay, tempering zeal with wisdom, that sounds like a good thing. Baptism and reception of converts, okay, yeah, whatever, that's good to have converts. And then against ecumenism, and then don't be deceived by Shia LaBeouf, papism, Padre Pio. Okay, so I'm Protestant, so I guess I can say, yeah, okay. But, as a Protestant, I don't think that the Catholic Church is evil and wicked per se. And it seemed to me, listening to Bishop Barron talk with Shia LaBeouf, that he had a genuine conversion experience. He went from drug addiction and all sorts of problems, alcoholism, to being a Christian. That's a beautiful thing. So I'm not deceived in saying that that was God and not the devil, I think, that did that. And then, he's got stuff about why we need the saints, and then this. So, like, he's only got like 10 videos or 12 videos or whatever it is. Yeah, I guess 13 in a trailer. But most of this is about this exclusivity thing. And then there's like a community post in here. Any unity that one might think exists outside of the church is superficial unity. There can only be unity in the person of Christ through the body of Christ, his church. But of course, what is his church? It's only the Eastern Orthodox Church. And so like, and then he talks about how, this stuff. And it's just like, okay, so he's got a big subscriber base for a relatively short amount of time. He's pushing most exclusively the exclusivistic aspect of the Eastern Orthodox Church. And he's just cutting right to the chase. There's no starting off with the beauty of the icons and the wonderfulness of the divine liturgy. So what is the goal of this? It seems like the goal of this is to keep people who maybe keep the ortho bros militant, and it seems like its purpose is to divide. Like, we got to remember that you're on YouTube and you can see anything there, but while you're on YouTube, you got to be reminded that only Eastern Orthodoxy is the right way and everyone else is a curse. and so looking at that he's gotten to such a level at such a quick amount of time, makes me wonder, like, oh, is there money behind this? It seems like there must be some. This is a very concerted effort. The videos all have like a certain aesthetic with the thumbnail, and the that one short I didn't see there. It was ecumenical councils are infallible. Like, okay, really? Because they're still made up of human beings. But like, what is the point of this channel, and where is the driving impetus behind it? And it seems suspicious to me, and I probably would not have thought of that this way before, except for Jacob and his recent concerns about how Saudi Arabian money is pushing a certain type of Islamic content on YouTube, and that those who dissent are being taken away from it. And this just makes me think, what even is this channel benefiting the world? Like, it's just going to make, you're going to get some more Andrew Tates into the Orthodox Church instead of converting to Islam, maybe, or something. But like, is it doing something good? And looking at that number of subscribers and stuff, like, okay, so I looked at this this channel, Act 17 Apologetics. Now, this is the new channel from David Wood. David Wood gave away his channel to a woman who does Christian apologetics towards Islam, named Hatun Tash. His old channel had 700,000 subscribers, and then he started a new channel like 5 months ago, I guess. There, and a lot of this has got his old content, and there's new content on here. So it looks like 5 months ago, and he's at 1.85 subscribers. So somebody who had a following of 700,000 subscribers, in 5 months, his new channel is up to a little less than 2. And this one in, maybe 3 months is almost as big. Like, that's kind of crazy. And so, what am I getting at here? I think that I've been a little critical of, like, Jonathan Peugeot, mostly because it's hard to disassociate anybody who's in the Eastern Orthodox Church from, like, the Ortho Bro crowd and this exclusivity thing. I want to be a good faith partner in communications and things like that. I just think at some point they are going to have to wrestle with this, and perhaps it will be Father Stephen and Jonathan Peugeot and North American Orthodox Christians who are going to have to move the needle on this thing. And it's saying, like, it needs reform. Honestly, I don't want them to change anything about the way they do their worship, their liturgy, all that, because I think that the fact that they have preserved so much of that tradition for such a long time, and of course it's not exactly the same, I'm sure, and I think we could probably debate about whether it goes back to the 1st century, but even still, if you say it's from, like, the 3rd and the 4th century, well, that's still like, oh, this represents still one of the oldest forms of Christianity out there. This is the way that people were doing it at least 1700 years ago, if not 2000. So, like, I don't want them to change anything, but I think they do have to figure out some way to say that they're wrong about this claim to exclusivity. And if they are not willing to do that because they believe it, well, that's kind of a problem, because that in and of itself, I think, takes away from the spirit of Christianity, because it's not supposed to be exclusive. Jesus said, "Come to me, all those who are weary and in need of rest." And he didn't say, and go through a process of catechesis and only use leavened bread for communion, and all this other stuff that's clearly been added on. And I think this is kind of my beef with tradition in general. Like, tradition is a good thing, but it can be turned into an ultimate thing. And if you have no mechanism through which to like weed out what the mistakes of the past, then you're in a lot of trouble. And more so, it's impossible. Like, this was Jacob's point in their conversation, is that Protestants the worst because we're not standing on the shoulders of giants. Well, that's not true, because what Martin Luther and John Calvin did was take a serious look at the things that were obviously wrong that the Catholic Church was doing. And when he talks about a divine vending machine of forgiveness, well, it's hard to represent that in a more clearly wrong way than the Catholics' practice of selling indulgences that was happening in the Middle Ages. And this is, of course, something Father Eric said. The Catholic Church doesn't do that anymore. So they have a mechanism by which they were able to change what they were doing wrong. So that is no longer the issue. But at the time, they had people who were basically, and this was not necessarily the intended purpose, but people who were buying indulgences ahead of time, basically as permission to sin. And some of these sins were like, robberies and whatever. So, like, that's a big problem. And the Protestant is not always, we're starting over from an individual. No, individuals are looking at the Bible, which is the most core thing. And as Jacob said, like, he takes the Torah and he looks at everything that comes after it, and it has to jive with what was previously given. And the Protestants do the same thing with all of the Catholic stuff and all the Orthodox stuff if we want to. But we have that litmus test of this, at this point here, is clearly contradicting what it seems that God was trying to convey through his scripture. And so without that, if you have to give equal weight to everything that's come before, it just makes any sort of progress impossible. And I don't mean progress as far as like progressive Christianity that's validating people's sinfulness, but I just mean like there is unreached people in the world, and if they have to learn a culture and a language before they can learn about Jesus, then that's not the spirit of Christianity. That's much more similar to what happens in Islam, where you have to learn Arabic and you have to learn to basically dress like an Arab person, and the culture is so like tied into the message. It's very non-universal, and I just don't see that in Christianity. And I think that the beauty of Christianity is that it is able to be expressed very many different ways in different cultures. So anyway, those are some thoughts on this thing, and I don't want to belabor the point, but just thought that was kind of weird. And hopefully good stuff will happen in the future. But at some point, I think there has to be a real conversation within Eastern Orthodoxy about this official stance that condemns all other Christians, and the fact that most people, at least in the Western world, recognize other types of Christians as actually being Christians. So, the end.